Hey guys, I'm just here to talk to you guys a little bit about personality-based disorders. I know that you have a crash course video that you have to watch, and certainly that gentleman does a pretty darn fantastic job of making a light of some very, very complex characteristics regarding personality disorders. But I wanted to just touch on a couple things to make sure that you guys are really understanding where personalities are, where do they come from, and if there's any potential treatment methods for personality disorders. So the first thing to keep in mind is what the gentleman brings up when he says that personality disorders are ego-syntonic, meaning that those particular individuals don't think that there is anything wrong with them. What really winds up being the huge difference between antisocial personality disorder and, say, obsessive compulsive disorder is the fact that individuals with antisocial personality disorder would never say that there's anything wrong with them, whereas individuals with obsessive compulsive disorder know that they have something wrong with them and that it causes distress and trouble to their lives, which more or less winds up being the very core of what personality disorders are. Individuals with personality-based disorders have these hardened emotional drives that are so very much ingrained into their personality that they wouldn't know how to change even if they wanted to. Two of the most commonly diagnosed personality disorders are antisocial personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is typically more female-oriented, and it has to deal with emotional instabilities. The easiest way that my professors always taught me to remember it is that with borderline personality is that you are towing the line between sanity and insanity. And as you guys have read about and worked with, insanity is not a psychological term, it's a legal term. But it is a good way to sit there and think about the characteristics of borderline personality disorder. Individuals with borderline very frequently love to gain the attention of those around them, typically in provocative fashion. They love to be the center of attention. They'll dress a particular way to get people's attention. They'll act a particular way so that they wind up, say, being the center, a star at a particular party, or they love to be in the limelight. Individuals with borderline personality disorder make it particularly clear that all eyes should always be on them. Sometimes they do so through their dress, and other times they do so by hurting themselves. They may threaten suicide. They may attempt to take too many pills so that they know that they'll be rescued in time, but all the attention will be there. They may try to hurt themselves. They may try to self-mutilate. Body dysmorphia may wind up coming into play with borderline. So individuals with borderline personality rarely wind up getting factual or truthful based treatment because they struggle in knowing the difference between what is socially acceptable and what is socially unacceptable. One of the best treatment methods actually winds up being group therapy, but the problem with borderline is that individuals love to have attention, so group therapy actually winds up being complicated, to say the least. The other particularly frequently diagnosed personality disorder winds up being antisocial personality disorder. And antisocial is something we've talked a bit about. We talked about the early onset origins in early childhood that go along with conduct-based disorder, in which children who do terribly awful things such as fire-setting behaviors, or sometimes you'll notice that they like to hurt small animals, or that they will lie and cheat and steal, and they really don't wind up showing much emotion. It transcends into adulthood in antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial individuals are almost always men. It is very, very rare to see a female sociopath or psychopath, is sometimes what it's interchanged with old terms. It's not to say that females can't have antisocial, it's the fact that individuals with antisocial personality disorder are almost just always male. It is also important to keep in mind that while antisocial personality disorder affects less than 1% of the world's population, there is a particularly high correlation with those who wind up in prison. Almost 20% of individuals who are in prison would be characterized with antisocial personality. Certainly, there is the aspect of antisocial personality that individuals wind up may becoming serial killers. And there are plenty of different Netflix shows and Hollywood movies and things along Criminal Minds TV shows, things along those lines that attempt to display antisocial personality. And certainly that could wind up being the case, but it doesn't always have to be about serial killers and murders and things along those lines. There are plenty of individuals who are on Wall Street who will swindle you out of every last dime and dollar that you have, that wouldn't feel any remorse for the actions that they've done and for the information that they may have stolen from you. To say that someone is antisocial, you have to take the word at its core. Antisocial acts are against society. They are the opposite of prosocial acts. Prosocial acts are acts that wind up benefiting society. Like, for example, what's going on right now is that you will find hopefully many different companies and people being prosocial and finding ways to donate masks and PPE equipment to nurses and doctors and everyone in the hospitals that absolutely need this kind of equipment that can't seem to get it because the supply has become too great on the different hospitals in the area. So with pro-social people, those individuals that have those items, I've read about different makeup and cosmetic parlors donating rubber gloves, and different companies who are helping to fabricate ventilator machines. I just read, which was very heartwarming, that Elon Musk has donated hundreds upon hundreds of ventilator machines to help out the fight against this COVID-19 virus. Those are pro-social actions, and they're really awesome. Antisocial actions, on the other hand, they wind up being against society. So, for example, individuals that wind up hoarding different behaviors during this particular quarantine that we're all supposed to be under. People willfully and menacingly trying to go into different stores, whether it winds up being a food store or something of the sort, and pretending to cough all over the particular food. I was just reading about one particular supermarket that wound up losing over $35,000 worth of food because a particular individual thought that it would be funny to cough all over the food, and the company can't possibly risk that, especially now that everything's going on. So they had to get rid of and destroy over $35,000 worth of food. That would be antisocial in nature. Antisocial personality disorder almost always has a footing in early childhood. It would be an extreme rarity for an adult to come along with these types of behaviors that have never been noticed in early childhood before. So with those two particular types of disorders, you hear about borderline personality having a potential treatment of group therapy, and in all actuality, there is no real potential treatment for antisocial personality disorder. At its very best, if you are able to nip the conduct disorder early enough on in that child's life, that would be a particularly good treatment method. But come time for adulthood, those personality traits are so far ingrained in that person's life that they would have absolutely no way of lying or no way of seeing any real treatment progress. It is important and theorized to think about that individuals with antisocial personality disorder display a very high dopaminergic reward system, which breaks down most simply into saying that they crave doing certain actions, and by doing those particular actions, they wind up getting a rewarding sensation, not so much from the pleasure sense as so much from the reward of doing these particularly malicious and harmful actions to other. They don't have a particularly high volume of information in their frontal lobe, and that's why sometimes they really struggle with impulsivity, that they wind up acting before they really think about certain things, and that can wind up getting individuals into trouble. When they have the time to sit and think about things, certain serial killers can go on for quite some time with their menacing ways. But when backed into a corner or forced to think quickly or on their toes or in a very fluid fashion, the lack of frontal lobe activity actually winds up being more detrimental to their particular causes. So as a recap very quickly, personality disorders are not a particularly common based or class base of disorders that wind up being diagnosed. In the grand scale of things, personality disorders are some of the rarer disorders to be diagnosed, and very frequently the individual won't be diagnosed because, once again, they are egocentric. They don't wind up thinking that there is anything wrong with their personality. It's become so ingratiated and ingrained into their personality that they would never ever want to go and seek out treatment, and it would be almost impossible for someone to convince them that they need to seek out treatment. Frequently, these cluster B disorders that are most commonly diagnosed wind up leading to hospitalization, and from there, therapy, diagnosis, and treatment can wind up taking place. I appreciate you guys listening in on the lecture. I hope you guys are still doing well and staying healthy and staying home. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Be well, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.